Welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today we're going to talk about best laid plans. Hello and welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. I am the Kale Houser, your host for today and pretty much every day, except for I think one episode where I haven't been the host. I wanted to say a special thank you for those of you that take the time and get value from this podcast. I appreciate the support and I appreciate the encouragement to keep going. So please don't stop. If you do find this valuable, then I will keep doing it. If not, then I'll figure out something else in some other way to provide value for you guys out there, guys and gals. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about best laid plans. And you may go, well, this may be kind of similar to my previous podcast where I talked about like those buzzsaw moments. But there's a critical difference that I want to distinguish here because even though they're similar in potentially how you react to them, there's a little difference in the buzzsaw moments were kind of those unexpected moments. Those were like you're walking around fat, dumb, and happy, and then all of a sudden just you ran into some event or person or people that kind of cut you off at the ankles, for lack of a better term. But this episode, I want to talk about our best laid plans. And that's that scenario where we've done the due diligence, we've done the planning, we've made the phone calls, we've laid the groundwork, the foundation is all there, the pieces are in place, the thing is scheduled, like people have confirmed, and you've done every conceivable thing that you could possibly think of based off of the experience of others, the experiences of yourself in the past with having done potentially this thing before. For lack of a better term, you have your best laid plans. Everything, your checklist has been done. You've marked off all the items. And it's like that, those moments, like no matter how much we plan, no matter how much we arrange and confirm, things just fall apart, right? It may be something unexpected happens that you did not anticipate. It may be that somebody you were counting on chose not to be reliable or chose to put some other priority in place. It could be that someone you were relying on or some agency or vendor you were counting on didn't show, or they had their own emergency pop up, right? That happens all the time. But it's unexpected in nature, or even if you did plan for a contingency of, maybe you had a 50-50 probability of a thunderstorm at your wedding kind of thing, some big event. You have your outdoor main, community outreach event for your business or some big carnival or fair or arts and crafts show. What that looks like for you that, the weather's 50-50 and you made all these contingencies like, okay, well, if it goes the bad 50%, the thunderstorms and the wind, well, these are what we've got in place to help mitigate that, beyond just canceling the whole thing. But maybe sometimes it's just worse than what you can plan for. It's worse than what you expected it to be in this unintended consequences of whatever that looks like in that situation. And it really becomes this blind side of, again, you're walking along, you've done your due diligence, you're a responsible adult, a responsible business owner, you're a responsible leader. You've sent out the reminder emails, you've reserved the venues and all those things, but you're still just all of a sudden out of nowhere, just boom, blindsided by some, not necessarily catastrophe, although this would qualify for that, or a catastrophe would fall under this, best laid plans falling apart, but just something doesn't go right or how it was supposed to or how you intended. And what carries you through these inevitable setbacks? There has to be something that you fall back on that carries you through these guaranteed to happen to you at some point events where things don't go how you plan, where things, despite your best efforts, whether external, internal, something on your team, someone on your team, it falls apart. And I would ask you, do you have that thing identified? Do you have a fallback point, to use like a military term, a point of retreat where you're going to steadily, regroup and reattack, but you got to pull back from the battlefront, as it were, in order to be able to collect your thoughts and come up with a plan with whatever remaining resources you have in this instance. and for some people, it's their faith, right? A lot of people, that may be a last line of defense, the all else fails, praying to the Lord, praying to God, or whatever you pray to, if you get me out of this situation, or if you make this go right, then I will never do X, Y again, or I'll forevermore do, A, B, and C over here as a repentance or whatever that is. For some people, that's their go-to right off the bat, is, they are constantly in that kind of prayer mode, and their faith is what really grounds them and solidifies them in all kinds of things that maybe don't go their way, whatever that is. For some people, it's their team that they built around. Like, okay, hey, I put myself out there and I just about got my head chopped off because of something happened. Now I need to regroup, and now we pull together collectively because we are a team and we're working towards this common goal, and we're now having to pool even more resources and get this to make it successful, or hopefully pull some sort of win out of this catastrophe. For other people, it's just that pure dedication, desire to win, no fail, can't quit attitude, that no matter how many walls they hit, they just keep boom, 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 busting through them, climbing over them, going around them, whatever it takes to make that thing successful. And I would argue, more than likely, this is where a lot of, especially if you're in the entrepreneur realm and you started your own business, you had a little, at least a tidbit of this kind of mentality, because all entrepreneurs have obstacles they have to overcome. Otherwise, they're just not entrepreneurs. The people that don't have that are, working for somebody else, doing something else besides starting their own business and maintaining their own business. And then for other people, kind of the other category that people lean back on is their family. Whether it be your spouse, your kids, whether they be little kids or grown kids. If you've got a large extended family with cousins and aunts and uncles and all those things, brothers and sisters, certainly if you grew up in that kind of environment where you had that childhood support that has matured and aged into your adulthood, as well as parents. Maybe your parents are the type that they've gone before you and they're great mentors to you because you might be in a similar business, or you took over the family business and you have them to fall back onto of, hey, mom and dad or aunt and uncle, whomever, what happened when you tried to do this event in the business, and, what am I doing wrong? Like, help me, guide me, mentor me. And for a lot of people too, just having the kids and that responsibility of having to produce and provide for them, the classic, I want my kids to grow up better than I did, or have more than what I had growing up, is a driving force for a lot of people, especially men in particular. I think we all feel that kind of responsibility to try to produce more and better quality than what we may have had, in order to make, because we all have this like, oh, my life could have been so much better if only, all those types of things. And we try to provide that for our kids, but it's a never ending vicious cycle, right? I'm sure my dad thought about that from my grandparents, from his dad, and then just down the road of always wanting to provide more and better for your family. So I would argue that's a pretty big one for a lot of people. And then the final one is really maybe because there's just no other options. You don't necessarily have a spouse or a family or kids that you're trying to provide for. You don't have a big team around you. Maybe it's you and one other person that you just hired 2 weeks ago, so you don't even know them that well. And maybe you're not at that point where you've got that internal spiritual maturity in order to have a faith that carries you through these types of events. And sometimes it comes down to there's just no other option but to keep moving forward. Right? You've expended all the resources. In the classic Tony Robbins, you've burned the boats. You got on your ship, you sailed across that body of water, and you burned the boats. There's no going back. You just have to keep going. And I want to encourage you, no matter where you fall, and maybe it's a multiple of things and several layers as you go down that list. And if there's more, absolutely, please, leave a comment and say, this is what really, drives me forward in the best laid plans falling apart type of scenario. Because I would love to hear it and discuss it in the comments, or, certainly shoot me an email at Kale Houser Leadership. But kind of do that self-analysis in your life and in your business and in how you lead other people of when this happens. And it's always better to think through it ahead of time than while you're going through it, or certainly after the fact as a learning scenario, but not being in reactionary mode to whatever that disaster, or as that plan is falling apart and that thing is going to, completely downhill that you didn't expect it to. Think about, like, all right, who's my go-to when things get bad? Is it your spouse? Is it your wife, your husband? Is it your business partner? Is it just your team in general? Because you have that kind of supportive atmosphere and culture that you really come together and build each other up when these type of events happen, no matter who they happen to or what department they happen to. So that's something to kind of a little bit more on the conceptual side of the house for leadership secrets. But it's absolutely critical that hopefully you identify what that is for you ahead of time. So that way you're better prepared for when these events happen. Again, everyone has these moments of it feels like no matter what you've done and how much you've confirmed and set reminders in your phone and, check the traffic and weather and flights and all those types of things, just stuff kind of happens, right? And our best laid plans oftentimes get disrupted in some form or fashion. So hopefully that doesn't happen too often or too egregious to you, but just anticipate it if it hasn't already. That's just life, and that's the way it goes sometimes. All right, everybody, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon, evening, morning, whatever it is for you that you are listening. Thank you again. Have a fantastic afternoon, no matter where you're at in the world. Bye.